guys and gals. Take a sip here. Before we get started. Okay. What am I going to pull for you today? You know what? I think we should do some moonology because we're about a week out from the full moon. I believe it is a full moon in Sagittarius. Maybe Scorpio if you are following a different astrology system, okay? So do look that up in your chart. Whatever your chart may be, there's lots of different signs in our charts. So, you know, why limit yourself, right? And that's kind of what spirituality, messages, tarot, things of that nature are about. It's about exercising our imagination, okay? And the possibilities that lay ahead that are healthy for our spirited bodies, okay? So, if you are feeling that pull of the moon, this reading may be for you. Kind of like my dog when we went to the park earlier, and oh my god, I just never know which dog it is that's gonna set her off. We pulled in, and I had my lunch, and I was gonna try and eat my lunch, and I had to like drive to a different place in the park because she just would not, even with me telling her, like, knock it off. She just was insistent, and it's like, all right, this is, and sometimes that happens. Collective, we gotta move. So, if you're feeling the pull of this moon energy, and if it's an emotional thing that's pulling you into something that you don't necessarily want to be in, you don't have to go there. Okay, it might be just kind of you're feeling that deep, inward breath, and then, exhale out into, the ethers. All right. So, get the card flipped over. Yes, expect powerful change. Okay. So we will have a full moon coming up when we release things, right? And then that gets us ready for thinking about what we want for the next new moon when we're actually trying to manifest things. Sometimes things don't manifest in the way that we always want. That doesn't mean that we're not getting results. Okay? So, for this full moon, if you're not quite there yet, right? Give yourself a little bit of grace because maybe you made some progress along the way, okay? And just being able to see your progress, that's going to give you the momentum to keep going and keep that powerful change, an expectation in your life, and not just oh, well, it happened to work out this time. No, it worked because you worked on it, right? Like, and so when the new moon comes around, you're going to have something else, and maybe it's related to some of these other things, okay? Um, yeah. But I feel like collective for some of you, you're going to get to the point where some things feel like a well-oiled machine versus the bumpity bump bump. Uh, that you may have been experiencing as of late or in, say the recent 6 months to year. Okay. Adjustments are required. Okay. So maybe you've had to make some of those adjustments. Maybe one of the adjustments is letting things go. Okay. And that's going to be coming through with the full moon. All right. Letting go the expectation of it turning out perfectly. Did we did we graduate with flying colors, or did we graduate at the end of the day we graduated, and that's an accomplishment in itself, right? Everybody has their own challenges, their own achievements to celebrate, right? So we might need to adjust some of our expectations about what celebrations we should be actually celebrating. Right? Like, Hey, yeah, maybe somebody's getting out of jail. Yeah, celebrate that and celebrate that there's a chance at a new life. Right? Okay. So, being grateful for what opportunities we have right in front of us. Okay. The energy is gaining momentum. What was I saying earlier? That's why you're going to be expecting this powerful change, because of that momentum. Because you're already doing it. You're making the things happen. All right. Bring love into the situation, some Aquarian energy. So, collective, if there has been some stagnation, don't be afraid to leave that behind, because not everybody is necessarily moving at your pace. Yeah. What do you need to release? Release the expectation that somebody's going to be running beside you the whole time. Maybe this is your mile or two to run alone, right? You ever see that famous, poem about, somebody walking along the beach, with Jesus, right? And when I look back, there was only one set of footprints, they said, right? So, sometimes it's our faith, it's our spirit, it's the universe helping guide us through those times, and even our spirit guides, right? Maybe our ancestors, right? Um, when maybe some other folks weren't able to be next to us. And it's not because they didn't want to, or, you know what I mean? It's just sometimes that's how life is, right? So, letting go of the expectation of how things might look. Support for you might look very different than, maybe the support that you saw so and so have when you were growing up, or, however it is. But collective, the thing is, when you look around, are those folks' lives, and I'm not trying to place judgments upon those people, but it's like, you have to ask yourself, are you, craving something that those folks have that you don't have in your life, right? And also, at the end of the day, are there certain responsibilities that those folks have that you don't have, that maybe is a good thing for your life, right? So, a little self-reflection never did anybody, you know, um, too much of a disservice, right? Okay, answer the call. What is your soul being called? What is your soul calling you to do? Okay, so I think your soul is calling you to start actually expecting this powerful change, and being like, yep, I'm the one who, yep, I made the bet on that. I'm the one who bought that for the house and it looks amazing. I'm the one who, right? You know what I mean? It's like you've stepped up and answered the call by doing these things and putting the effort in, putting the work in, and that's why this expectation of powerful change is actually going to be like your reward. Okay. So, this is Ocean Jasper. Sorry, it's kind of dark in here right now. Let's see if this will help any. Probably not too much. Anyway, it's kind of it's an evening reading anyway. So let's see what else here. Keepers of the earth, you are not alone. Ancient ancestors stand beside you. Okay, right. What was I saying about it? It may feel like you're running that mile or two alone. You're writing that chapter of your life alone, right? But really, right? If you're in this collective, if you're here, part of the reason is because you feel like there's something else there, right? Okay. And just realize that there are realms here to support you in your efforts. All right, to support the you know the balancing of your chakras, the exuberance of life, the experience of joy in your life. Okay, so that might be part of the adjustment, is just kind of acknowledging that yes, you are surrounded by this. Okay. For some of you, it might be an acceptance, right? That maybe you didn't grow up thinking about or being taught because of certain, religious practices or whatnot. You know what I mean? All those, or just uh, or due to healthy scientific uh, proof and doubt, and the natural law of things, right? But the more we get in touch with nature, the more we start really tapping into what the ancestors are saying to us, right? And as humans here inhabiting this planet, we are the higher intelligent beings, right? Yeah, yeah, right. So don't look now, we're the adults, right? Don't look now, we're the adults, right? Okay. All right. So us keepers of the earth, right? Trying to leave this planet a little bit better than how we found it, right? So, for that, adjustments, they need to be required, right? That doesn't mean, give up all consumerism and all material goods. Well, where are you going to live? You're probably going to live in a house made of materials, of something. Well, live off the land. Well, okay, so you might end up cutting a tree down, and then you're the same as, the people that live in town that use wood to build their houses. When you really start thinking about full circle, sometimes that powerful change, right? Yeah, we know exactly how it starts within ourselves, right? What is that song? Cool Change. Is that Little River Band? But it is. He's saying, "I'm ready for a cool change," and then it has this nice little melody, and it's just kind of like drifting off, kind of like he's not going to worry anymore. And part of that is because you have this universe at your back saying, "Yeah, you're here now on this planet, right? How are you impacting it?" Maybe that's the change that you seek to impact the planet in a positive way, in a healthy way, right? That could be a mindset shift, requiring some adjustment, right? We just had a half moon out there, you know what I mean? So if you're not there yet, it's like, don't give up, there's still time, right? Julia Child wasn't on TV until she was 40 years old. She's probably still one of the most famous. Like if you asked on Family Feud, name some famous chef, even though she's no longer with us, somebody would probably say Julia Child in that top 100 answers, right? So you don't really know what your impact's going to be. Okay. Um, did when Michael Phelps was born, did he know he was going to become like, the next Olympic superhero dude? And then at 20 some years old, that's a pretty big responsibility to carry, right? So even folks that are blessed, okay, with success, they still have to make adjustments, right? Okay. Yeah. We all human beings are not unique in that way that we all don't require some adjustment, even as we're getting what we want. Part of why we're getting what we want is because we are adjusting things, and we're answering the call. Well, what does that require you to do? If you have a cell phone or a wall phone, answering the call means, or intercom, you have to do something. You have to press the button, you have to say, please answer the call. You have to say, right? Talk now, right? So what is it you're going to be doing? Right? Have you made those plans yet? What are you looking forward to? What's next on the agenda? Okay. Maybe you're like, I don't want anything on my agenda. Okay. Well, maybe your next agenda is like decompressing and making a stress-free you know vacation plan, right? The ever unfolding rose, cracked open, happening for you, not to you. Okay, so let go of the pressure. Again, like I said, it's supposed to be pushing you outward, not pressing down, right? It's not to crush you, right? You don't crush a rose, you let a rose bloom open, okay? So, once that sun hits, energy gaining momentum, right? This little bit of rain we had, and then all of a sudden my garden went, phew. My onions look so much better. The tops were starting to look really dry already. I was like, oh no, but they sprung right back up. Star seed, what lights you up? Okay. So, yeah, what is it that you enjoy talking about, that you enjoy doing? Um, something that you enjoy sharing with others as well. Okay. Yeah. So, if you aren't enjoying something, it's okay to set it aside, right? It's okay to take a break. It's okay to, get a new hobby, right? That doesn't mean you're supposed to give up, right? But sometimes, that pressure that we exude on ourselves, again, is not always very healthy, okay? So, again, it says bring love into the situation. For most of us, we can just say, look, I did the best I knew how with the information I had at the time, right? So, you know, if you want to, ride home about how somebody's a terrible person because they didn't say whatever that you wanted them to say, and but then they did say it, but they didn't say it right, and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? At a certain point, it's like, okay, that person is not somebody who's going to be pleased with really anything that you have to say. And that's when you have to recognize it's like, okay, you know, almost like a little invisible force shield, of protecting yourself from other people's emotional projections, And it's like if they want to go cry in the corner about it for the next 5 days, they can, right? That doesn't really have anything to do with you at this point because collective, you're the one that's been making adjustments. You're the one whose energy has been gaining momentum because you're listening to what the universe is telling you. You're making the adjustments, and that's why the very first card that you got is expect powerful change. Now, you might not think it's so powerful and wild and crazy, but to other folks that ain't doing none of this, yeah, it really is. Right? But like somebody like Michael Phelps, what he's going to tell you? He's going to be like, well, are you going to the pool every day? Are you doing your weightlifting in the off season? Are you eating a healthy diet? Like the same stuff that everybody else says, right? But a lot of people don't want to do, right? Okay. So, what they say is success is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration, right? Okay. So you can stay stuck in the bell jar, right? Or you can adjust, right? If you don't know what the bell jar is, look it up. Okay, it's a literary reference, not alliteration. Literary, two different words. All right, I'm gonna get into this tarot, and that should be the extent of the message today. Okay, so thank you for everyone who has joined and everyone who has kindly participated in the chat. If you are on the chat today, please do like the video. Remember, you do not have to be a subscriber in order to like the video. Okay? So I'll never know. I will never know who it is. But if you are a subscriber, and especially if your name is in the chat and you're making harassing comments, then obviously I know who you are and I can either reach out and block you, or your message will be held for review automatically by Google/YouTube, right? Per their algorithm. So it's always in your best interest to be polite to others and towards the reader, right? When you have joined these lives. And remember, this is a free collective reading. So take from it what you will. If you need something more intense, if you need a personal reading, I highly encourage you to reach out to a local reader. There are many, many intuitive folks out there who, and part of the reason why we use the cards is the cards are a confirmation. Okay. So, if you're concerned about even what they're saying to you, go in there and say, well, can I take a picture of the cards when we're done? Or can I write down what you're saying and write down some notes, along about these cards? Most readers, I would imagine, would have no issue with you doing that, right? Okay, because they actually want to. The real readers out there actually want to help you. Okay. They're not here trying to say, well, stay tuned. What happens next in your fucked up relationship? You know what I mean? Where you get people tuning in every day and they're like, oh no, and it's like, constant state of panic that's a lower vibration. Okay, that is karmic city. All right. So it's kind of really interesting to me that the Five of Wands. So you can see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's like a fight for your attention, literally. Okay, so now that you're like stepping up and answering the call, and people are seeing these changes, although maybe you're just like, and maybe this is something where you started going to the gym in January, and now it's like you're looking amazing, and everyone's like, oh my god, but you're like, well, I guess it's paying off because I've been going. You know what I mean? Like by this time, you're kind of like, it's no big deal, right? But to everybody else, it kind of is. And this is why. This is why you're feeling the pull, okay? Especially if you're an empath, okay? If you are an intuitive person, right? Maybe you're just somebody who has a sixth sense about things and you're just like noticing, it's like, man, people are extra cagey today, or I don't know what this is, blah blah. Well, this is part why, right? And it's because for a lot of us collective that have it, seemingly figured out, and I say seemingly because not everybody sees all the struggle behind the scenes, right? So what you're seeing is all that struggle, but like projected in a weird way towards attention. So it's like in a what I'm getting is it's in like a toxic kind of more lower vibration kind of way. So if you choose to ignore this, don't feel guilty about that. That might be part of the call that you're answering, where it's like where before you might have felt the obligation to return so and so's phone call, stop by so and so's house. Have you da 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 lately? Blah blah, whatever it is. Instead, you're like, you know what? Um, I'm answering the calls that I'm being told to right now, and none of them are these ones, right? Okay, so again, that may be something very new, very eye-opening for you collective, where it's like, oh, and maybe that's part of these major shift is because people are starting to see now that you're applying your power in your own life, right? And not applying it to, massaging their egos and whatever it is that they were benefiting, right? Yeah, then they're like, oh, yeah, the collective was impactful in my life. Some of them are they're seeing that, and it's like a loss, and that's why it's like this grasping. I'm getting this like grasping at straws type thing, because it's in it, and it's almost like when somebody swings and misses, right? Because it's like you're not there. You literally left this drama a long time ago because you answered a higher call. I'm hearing Call of the Wild too, so that might be an important novel for somebody. I had been thinking about also The Adventures of Natty Gann, which I believe that was a book before they made it into a movie also. So those could be significant for somebody, and also I guess kind of like theme wise, this kind of like lone wolf energy in those movies. So you might, and yeah, collective, you could be like, what are you talking about? All this fuss over me, because maybe you're just, yeah, going about your business, right? And that's just literally it. And then it's like, oh, wow, okay, here we go. So, allow yourself to be the example of somebody who has answered the call. You know what I mean? It's okay to sit up with your chest out. You know what I mean? You don't have, there's so many people I see walking around town sometimes, and they might have like their work uniform on or something, and they got their head down and blah, blah, and it's like, man, you should have your head up. There's a lot of people that don't have jobs out there. You know what I mean? And, and people that can't get along with others, right? And that's part of the reason why they don't have jobs too, you know. Ace of Wands. Wow. Sagittarius, Leo, and Aries again, that full moon in Sagittarius. So, collective. For some of you, you might be meeting somebody new, okay? And I feel like your ancestors are going to help you adjust to this person if it's kind of meant to be. It's going to be one of these things where it's like, yeah, because you've been in this unbothered energy, and now it's going to be one of those things where you might like think you're going to confuse this person with this energy, but you're going to see your ancestors are going to like show you that like that is not the case. There's going to be something, message I'm getting is there's going to be something very clear, very almost defined, you know what I mean, like Say one of your grandparents always drove a Buick, you know what I mean? And like this person that we're talking about, this Ace of Wands person like ends up showing up in a Buick or something. Like it's like that kind of, specificity. You know what I'm saying? Okay. But it will make sense to you because and maybe for somebody that's the message, but I have a feeling that especially for whoever this message is that you're tapped in, you're gonna get that clarification like kind of as it's happening. Okay, so wow, look at that, Ten of Pentacles. Who doesn't want that, right? Money, 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 right? The energy is gaining momentum. It's happening for you, not to you. Okay. So part of this, why you're going to start getting some of this financial abundance too, is because you're putting yourself out there, right? You're like, yes, I am the boss. Yes, this is my business. Yes, I am the expert. What's next, right? Some people, they get that, they call it imposter syndrome. Okay. But it's not because necessarily because of something that they're doing. Sometimes it's, they're kind of seeing how other people are reacting to them, right? There's a lot of movies where they've talked about that, right? When a younger person or a person that doesn't necessarily look like, the clients, right? And then they're kind of like, oh, it's just you. You know what I mean? Like, there's not somebody more impressive just gonna walk in and handle my account, right? And a lot of times that character, has that struggle. And it's like that, it's that pressure of the world trying to crush the rose, right? But what your purpose is to unfold and bloom and show them how brilliant you are, right? And sometimes you lose accounts and clients because they are not ready to stop and smell the roses. No, they are not. Well, they don't look like that rose. Again, like I was saying earlier, you can get bent out of shape and be mad at it, or you can walk yourself over to the bank and cash them checks, honey, because I feel like that's what's going to be happening real fast. Real fast. Yep. Like, I heard somebody say, no hesitation. Like, who's advertising on my reading right now? Shoot. Like, you do not have to worry about me. Oh my god. Okay, yeah. So and this is partly what's going to make you kind of feel like this starseed energy is kind of um more realistic almost, because it's like, everybody dreams of being able to, make a living from their passion, right? That doesn't always occur. That doesn't mean you give up on your passion, right? And in part that's why they call it a passion project, because the type of compensation and the type of abundance you receive from doing these things is not necessarily monetary or financial in nature, but yet here you have the 10 of pentacles, and that is exactly about the money bags. So again, when you go to these readers, okay, you might want to write that down. Be like, hey, they drew the 10 of Pentacles, and go look it up. See how freaking good it is. Okay? So, do you really want to go out and get that personal reading, or is this 10 of Pentacles good enough for you? Okay? And that's kind of at the end of the day too, collective, where you have to decide, right? Are you gonna succumb to the pressure, or are you going to enjoy the gifts that you're being given? You know, um, I can't remember what I was watching. It was like one of these shows, and it's like, okay, well, this was like back in the like '60s or whatever, and one of the male actors was William Holden. Anyway, but so he's with this female lead character, and she's like, "Oh, I'll be humiliated if I come out too soon, blah blah blah," and he's like, "Aren't they? They're gonna talk about you anyway, So you might as well like make it count, right? Make it count in a good way, right?" So again, that's this star seed. What lights you up? You know, maybe you have a collection of, um, you know, I don't know, Doctor Strange comics or something, like from like a special series. I don't know. Maybe that like gets you. Do you know what I'm saying? Like in a position to be joyful, right? Instead of expecting always the tower, right? Or yeah, expecting the gloom and doom, releasing that part of it. It's like, sorry to disappoint you, nothing bad happened. There's a Talking Head song I really like, and it's like heaven where nothing happens. You know what I mean? It's just kind of like you're just existing, Like sometimes it's like, yeah, you don't want anything to happen because that means like a trip to the emergency room, or you have to call a plumber or whatever. you know? Anyway, look at that sun card. That is amazing. Um, yeah. So I feel like you're really going to be dancing with the life here over the summer, especially. Okay, so Leo energy might be significant as well. So that's kind of like the end cap of summer, but before we get into the fall season, right? But we also have the Ace of Wands here, which is Leo, in there as well. Okay, so for some of you, collective, this really could be like romance of a lifetime, romance time, right? Where you're looking good, you're feeling good, you're loving yourself, and you're allowing yourself to be loved, right? Because your dedication, your hard work's been paying off, right? Where it's like you don't have to worry about this and this anymore. You don't have to be in the struggle of. You don't have to be in the paycheck to paycheck. You don't have to be, you know what I mean, because your business is, you have it working now where it's, like paying you or making you money while you sleep, how whatever it is, right? Maybe you have the right team. You know what I mean? If you're running that kind of a business, if you're not, just a solo um, entrepreneur. Okay. So, collective, also, I have been hearing from quite a few readers online about how they um, don't really get credit for their views and stuff. I don't think I have enough subscribers even on to have mine set up for Super Chat, but I do have a donation link available where the donations do actually go to me, and that is listed in the main description. So if you're wanting to do that, please do. But like, I don't think anybody's like tried to hack my views or anything like that, in terms of like stealing funds. But I have heard of complaints about that. I really wish YouTube would be a little bit more aggressive about handling things like that, because there are people that are, doing readings, and sharing their energy and, helping the collective, right? Yes, for for most of us, this is a spiritual journey and we want to be sharing, but at the same time, I just saying kind of in defense of the spiritual and tarot community, especially folks that do readings and they count on those views, as part of their income. You know what I mean? It's like they're working hard. You're able to see it, so why shouldn't they be compensated? Like that makes zero sense to me whatsoever. Anyway, just had to put that out there. Maybe somebody at YouTube's listening. Like, can you guys get that straightened out? I'm sure it's not the first time that that's happened. So um, it just seems very increasingly complicated these days. Like, when you're setting up a website or any, kind of business, there's just lots of different payment options and, um, you know, people that want your passwords and information and all this kind of stuff. So, even on apps and things like that, do be aware of what um, the guidelines are on apps. So, um, if you're communicating with somebody outside the app, that might be a violation, right, of the agreed standards and practices when you click those little buttons that said, yes, install on my phone, right? So, I just think people need to take that a little bit more seriously. I know the internet is still kind of viewed a little bit as the wild, wild west, but, I've personally been using the internet since the late 90s, okay? So, some of this, activity and especially the, harassing side of it is really not new to me at all. And it just is boring, to be honest. Um, so, anytime I see like message blocked for review, I personally get a little chuckle out of it because I know YouTube and Google are actually like doing their job there. Okay. So, anyway, I just wish they would do a little better with some of the continued harassers that, just make fake multiple accounts, but eventually they kind of run out of steam as well. Anyway, what do they say? New levels, new devils, right? So that's the thing too, collective. If there aren't people hating on you, if there are people hating on you, like to the point where it's just like, oh my god, maybe it's just because they're jealous. They wish they could do what you're doing, but they're not doing it again because they don't have the dedication that you do, right? And for many of you collective, you have answered that call. Okay, so yep, step into your star seed, abundance here this summer. Love yourself a little bit more, okay? And accept a little less of what other people are saying or thinking about you. Right? How about that? Okay? So until next time, please do manifest wisely. Bye bye.